Hey guys, trying out a new camera setup, so please leave me some comments and let me know what you think of this. So I want to show you real quick how to take apart a socket wrench and put it back together for the purposes of cleaning and repairs. These things are like any other tool, require maintenance, and a lot of people do not do it. They just, in the age of lifetime warranties, they just bring them back to the store and say, whatever, give me a new one. And that's why jobs are lost to China, because everybody expects instant gratification because they are too busy to do basic maintenance. Enough of that little rant. So let me know what you think about the video quality and the sound, and if this is nice, we'll keep filming with this setup I have going here. It's basically just using my cell phone instead of my camera. So all you're going to need to take these apart is a split ring, or not even a split ring, just a regular set of needle nose pliers. You can use those split ring or snap ring pliers, doesn't matter, you know. Simpler is often better. And let me say that 99% of the sockets on the market nowadays are constructed in exactly this fashion. I used to work at a Sears hardware store, so I probably rebuilt 1 million of these things over the years. And you know, I kind of worked during the age when they went from building these things in America till they started making them overseas. And so I got to see that kind of transformation in the product. And well, let's just say that pretty much everyone out there makes these the same. So if you can take one of these apart, you can take them all apart. The only major difference are the round-headed one with the fine teeth are a little bit more intricate, but not much. The parts are the same, the process is the same. There's really not too much different, it's just things look a little different. So what we're going to do is we're going to just let me show you. Make sure you can see all the details here. There's a snap ring that holds this whole thing into place. You see the two little holes for it. We are literally just going to put our pliers in there, compress that, and pull it out. Just like the game Operation. No biggie there. And what I do is I just lift the gears a little bit, just enough so I can pull this plate off, because I want everything to stay together. Because if there is a problem, what I want to be able to do is see what's going on in here. So as you can see, this is a ratchet, and what you have here is your black piece here, which is your gears. It has that actual drive part, and it has gears on the outside of it. This, let me grab something to point with here. This kind of silver part here is called the pawl. This is a piece of metal that has teeth on it that's spring-loaded and engages with the gears. Trying to get that glare off for you, but there's that piece is the pawl. This is your selector, which in that, basically, as you turn it, turns the pawl. You can see that pawl goes from left to right, and that's what changes your directions of your gears. You use the different parts of the pawl, which are kind of rounded like a smiley face, to engage the gears, and that's what makes it directional. Up here, only this part of the pawl is in contact with the gears, so it gives it that direction, and the gears cut into the pawl, the teeth cut into the pawl are directional, so now this part is in contact, so pretty neat. Now it's all held together by spring tension, guys. Spring and detents, that's it. So what I like to do is I just kind of take my thumb in here, and guys, these are not going to fly across the room, so you really don't have to go crazy about this, but I just like to take my thumb and hold the pawl, and then pull the gears out. We'll take a quick look at that. The gears, you can see you got your little quick release in the back that works your little ball detent there. The gears on this still look nice. None of them are broken. You can see they're very fine, guys. You wonder why these things strip out so easy, and that's why. These teeth are pretty small. And this is one piece, and there usually will be an O-ring here, and like an O-ring here. It helps seal off from dust and dirt. Set that aside. Now the insides, you can see this pawl has kind of popped up. We're going to pull that out. And if you also want to pay attention to what the front side looks like, because usually these do have a front and back, you want to make sure it's pointing in the right direction. Mine has a 2 and a 7 on it, so I know which one to point out. You can see in here the selector has a detent sticking out of it. So we're going to pull that, we'll straighten it out so you guys can see a little better. See that detent in there, the black detent. Sometimes it sticks to the spring, sometimes it doesn't. See, at this point it did. It's a black hollow detent with a spring inside, and that goes into the top of the selector, which is right here. You can see that hole in there in the top of the selector. Now your selector is going to pop free. Selector is going to come on out to the back. Sometimes these are winged, sometimes they have like a little lip to them. You just wiggle them out, no big deal. Now, the hard part is, of course, depending on your model, is the detent for the selector. As you can see, there is another detent down in here. Black detent, just the same. It does not fall out. This one doesn't fall out, but some of them do. Some of them are a ball bearing and will just fall out, and there's a spring in there as well. So there is a spring, and we'll pull it out so you can see. There is a spring and detent in there as well. That could be a spring and ball, and if it's a spring and ball, they're a little more difficult to put back together. But what you're going to have to do probably is get a thin piece of metal like a bobby pin or something and push it down before you put that selector back in. So you may need to fabricate a little tool of a bobby pin or a paper clip or whatever to push that detent down as you push the selector in from the back. Now, if you're having a problem with your selector, either being loose and floppy or being too stiff to move, your problem is going to be with this detent and the spring. Your spring could be bound up, or your detent could be bound up or in there cockeyed. Pull them out, grease them up, oil them, clean them, find out if there's any debris in there, and put them back in. Make sure they move freely. They should go, up and down like any other detent. They should have free motion there. If you may need to stretch the spring out a little bit to give it a little more pressure. So that's no big deal if you do have to stretch that spring out a hair. Just like I said, be careful because some of these are ball bearing as opposed to this big black detent. So they can be a real bear to put back together. And that's that, guys. When you're doing this, clean out this cavity real good. Give it a wipe down. These things usually come packed in grease. I oil them. So I typically like to use like a gun oil as opposed to a grease because I'm usually in here enough keeping them clean that it doesn't matter. But if you're the kind of guy who never wants to do this again, you might want to use grease. So we're going to put this detent in. We're going to get it started. They're all different, but this one has a little lip on it, so you kind of got to get it rocked in. Okay, that's kind of rocked in. Now what I'm going to do, because this one's a nice easy detent, and my pliers have a little bit of a bend to them on the tip. Makes it really easy for me just to push down that detent and use my finger to push in the selector the rest of the way. So that's in now. It's under spring pressure, so as you can see, so it has that same, this should operate freely, and if it doesn't, like I said, check that detent, check that spring. That's where your problem is. That should work at this point. That's one piece of the puzzle. And when you're putting this back, it really doesn't matter how you leave it. I typically just turn it off to one of the sides. But we're going to leave it straight out because we're going to put that detent back in. And once again, this can be a little on the difficult side if it's a ball bearing. So this one here luckily is not, so I can just literally kind of drop it back into the hole, and the hole holds it. That's what she said. So you can see that in there. These ones are particularly easy because the pawl, this is probably the easiest ratchet ever. So normally what you might have to do is you might have to use that tool again to push the detent down and then put the pawl in. This one here you don't have to. This design is actually very simple and very easy. So we're going to get our pawl, those nice teeth on it. Check those, make sure none are broken, make sure none are stripped out. Because now your next problem is going to be with this detent here in between the pawl. That gives the pawl spring pressure. So we're going to find my 2 7 side. And I'm basically just going to set it in. And I'm going to compress it down with my finger. I'm going to do this kind of quick, guys, because it's under spring pressure and it's also greasy. I hold it in and then just drop in the gears and let go of it, and it's in. That simple. That simple. And you can see now we have our function, and as I showed you before, I hope I did, you can see how that pawl is under spring pressure. The gears force it down, then the spring forces it back up. Now, if everything's working right, that should engage just fine, as long as your gears are fine. If your gears aren't stripped, the only problem you can have is with that detent in the spring. Sometimes there's a little bit of a gap in there. Sometimes that detent can come up and get cockeyed and caught in the gears, or you can get a little sliver of metal or dirt or whatever, or something in there. So if you clean that out, that will fix 99% of your problems. 99% of your problems are that something gets in between the pawl and the gears, and it forces that spring down, and then the gears no longer engage. So these just spin. You know, they just spin and spin and spin, and there's nothing you can do about it. So that can be your problem. But the only thing that really ever goes wrong with these is when you strip the gears. The actual physically only thing that goes wrong. And in that case, you got to rebuild them. There's no other choice. But for everything else, it's just cleaning. It's just, you know, they do. Sometimes the detents pop out or get stuck. And when you do that, you put them back together. 9 times out of 10, these things run great. It's a shame so many people send them back to the store on a lifetime warranty when there's nothing wrong with them. I mean, it's really, really shameful that we do that. That we're so lazy. This is such an easy process, guys. And I know I'm saying that as a guy who's done this 1,000 times, if not more. But and when you're done, you just put your split ring back in. And you're golden. That's simple, guys. That's simple. And if you do that once, twice a year, throw some oil in there, clean out the rust, these will last you a lot longer. I have never broken a ratchet. Because number one, I don't put cheater bars on them. I only use hand pressure. And number two, I always keep them clean and oiled. And if you do that, these things will last you forever. It's very rare to strip out the gears on these. You really need to put a lot of pressure, put, you know, like your foot, you know, like some people step on them and do all kinds of crazy things. They're meant to be used under hand pressure. If you do that, you keep them clean, do all that, they will last. Granted, I can't say you won't get some freak accident and have one just, you know, die on you. But as you can see, there's not much to go wrong. There's 2 springs, 2 detents, you know, and there's a couple of spring-loaded parts, and for the most part, it's just stuff getting in the way, metal slivers, broken tooth, whatever. And even if it's a broken tooth, sometimes you just pull it out of there, and it's fine. You saw that paw's kind of big. It engages 3 or 4 teeth at a time. If one tooth breaks, you can keep going with it, guys. It doesn't necessarily need to be replaced. So before you send these things off to the store for a new one, you know, take the time, learn how to take these apart, clean them, and oil them, and they will last you a lot longer, and you won't be so frustrated when these things start slipping and you think, oh my god, I gotta make a big trip back to the store. Well, you may not have to. You may just need to do a 5-minute clean job. Hope you guys enjoyed, and once again, let me know about the video quality and if you like this better.